I drank it.
Well, see, the funny thing about this is I guess this was a talk that he was giving either to a volunteer fire department or a police. It's a little difficult. The copy didn't come through. And then he's just got these things. First time meeting with my dad. Like the first time they met. Now that would be interesting. Do you know any more about the first time that they met, other than it says meeting my dad?
What I know is politics did not play anything as far as my brother was concerned. My dad was Republican precinct committeeman, and he shook President Truman's hand. He said, "Sir, I think I ought to tell you, I'm the Republican precinct committeeman." And Truman said, "We'll just have to see about that." And that was it. And we do not know to this day how my father voted.
Well, that is something that Dwight Smith is supposed to have said that night. He is supposed to have said, "Mr. President, I don't know the politics of the people in this group, but I bet tonight everybody here is a Democrat."
Yeah.
And that was supposedly the only political joke that was made that night.
We never knew when he voted. We didn't know who he voted for.
That year.
Did you know?
No.
Well, somebody sure surprised everybody that year
They did.
because a lot of things changed. I do want to thank you for this. I don't know how we're doing on time. I just wanted to, I don't even remember when we started, but I just wanted to share some of these things. I do have a lot of fun, especially since that night at Red Key when I said, imagine what it would be like if the president came in here. That changes everybody's mind. Now, every once in a while it gets a little adverse comment. You know, well, I hope today's president doesn't come in here, and I'll go time out. We're not talking about politics. We're talking about the fact that a man who was a past Grand Master of Missouri, or he could have been past Grand Master from anywhere, but he was a Mason, and he decided to go to Lodge. And I've also uncovered some information that I knew that wasn't correct. I'm trying to remember which lodge it was now. I think it was Cayman Lodge. I was giving this talk there one night, and I always ask, and I'll even do it tonight. Was anybody here tonight that was there that night?
I was across the street.
Oh, you were? Okay. So you saw all the people in the cars and
You know what was going on?
just looked out the window wondering.
My dad didn't come either. He was here.
And you were here that night.
Florida, I was here.
And you,
I was here, pregnant with her. And Lois was just his fiance at the time, and my mother. And I drove out, and we are parked out in front. And the plan was to have President Truman come to the car so we could meet him. Well, you explained what it was like. They were on top of my car, on top of the hood, I mean, all over.
Right.
And the Secret Service men just whisked him right out
Right.
to the limousine. It was too dangerous, you know. I am the only one in our immediate family that I never got to shake his hand, and I often regret that. I wished I had that opportunity.
yeah, that would have been neat to have actually got
Right.
to meet the president and shake his hand. And now you,
I didn't watch that for a week.
well, and then also, it's my understanding that the state police formed a line to escort him. I think you told me about that. See, that's not in any of the books. Somebody needs to really write up this when it's all in fact. It needs to be written down with a lot of the truth put into it. Because, see, that's not mentioned in the Goodly Heritage.
They had to be Masons, and the biggest part of the Masons that were up there that were state troopers were the big shots.
And then they formed a line for Harry to go in. And now I do like what he said that night, and that is he said that he held the fact that he was a past Grand Master of Masons in higher esteem than being President of the United States. It kind of reminds me of one of the founding fathers. Many of you are familiar with Thomas Jefferson. He wrote his own epitaph for his tombstone. It talks about everything that he did, and there's one thing he leaves out and off of it.
President.
The fact that he was President of the United States. And Harry Truman did say that he didn't know how anybody in his right mind would want to be president. I've got to tell you one more story, though, because I've saved this one kind of to last for me, but if you want to ask more questions or talk, it's fine with me. But I said I'd been as far west as Terre Haute and as far east as Richmond. Richmond was having a 50-year pin presentation. I forget what year it was now, but it was sometime after 95. It could have been 98, 99, somewhere in those years. And one of the ladies that belonged to the Eastern Star there, somebody she knew was getting her 50-year pin. So if you know far enough ahead, when you're chaplain at the Masonic home, you can book the bus. Excuse me, and the residents that don't normally get out can go to this event. So we had the Masonic home bus filled. In fact, Janet and I went ahead and drove over because there wasn't room for us on the bus. And we went to Richmond Lodge, and I gave the Truman talk in its version of that at that time. And at the end, I always say two things. Was there anybody present, like I said a moment ago, who was there that night? And then secondly, I say, are there any questions? And out of the clear blue, and this, I don't remember how many people was in this audience, but it was probably 150 or so. And out of the clear blue, one of the gentlemen that night who was receiving his 50-year pin, who'd already received it because I was the last thing on the program. I don't know if I should take the hint there, but I was the last thing. And anyway, he raises up his hand and he says, "You know how Harry Truman got to be president, don't you?" And I thought, oh no, but you're about to tell me. And so I said, no, I don't. And I didn't finish the rest of what I thought about you're about to tell me. And so he says, well, you know that he blackmailed Roosevelt into making him vice president. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, do you mind elaborating on how he did that? And he says, well, there was some aircraft manufacturers that were creating or making faulty aircraft parts. And he told Roosevelt that if you'll make me vice president, I won't expose this to the public.
Oh, I can't believe that.
And I stood there for a moment and I composed myself and I kept saying, Lord, please let me stay calm. And I said, well, first of all, this is not about politics. I said, I am an independent, so I want you to know that right now. And I very seldom discuss with anybody except my wife how I vote. And so I said, I have read the story of Truman's life 3 times in the book by McCullough, which is that big, thick one. And I said, I have listened to the CD, what was it, on the way to Missouri and on the way back, wasn't it? Janet got to listen to it too. She enjoys it after so many times. But anyway, and I will tell you that according to the historical records, Harry Truman did lead a Senate investigation for the manufacture of faulty aircraft parts. But he did not hide it. He went on television and exposed the manufacturers and told them in one of his speeches, and I remember this very well, he said, you are sending our boys over in faulty aircraft and this will not be allowed. And according to what I understand from history, that Roosevelt was so impressed because he did this, that's why he asked him to be vice president.
I believe that.
And so this man, he says, well, you're just a Harry Truman fan, aren't you? And I thought, oh, Lord, where's this going? But I didn't say anything, and I said, well, you know, sir, because I was taught this about dealing with someone who's upset. If you can stay in control and speak lowly, it does help. So I said, well, sir, you know, I really wasn't a Harry Truman fan until I started doing the Harry Truman talk that you heard tonight. And I said, now I've become a Harry Truman fan since then. But I'm going to tell you why, since you brought it up. And the reason is that Harry Truman was far from perfect. And he lost his temper. One time a guy criticized his daughter singing, and he went overboard. And I said, I said, he even got a little medal, and this is kind of forgotten. He got a little medal in World War I. Two things happened to Harry Truman in World War I. One of them is a horse fell on him and almost killed him. And he couldn't breathe for a while. He was stammering around on the ground. And another one is that they were trying to get this artillery, and back in World War I, they still pulled these big guns with a horse. And they were trying to get it turned around so they could shoot back, and they got under fire. And Harry Truman stood up. He got mad because something smashed his toe or finger or something. They don't know what he got mad about. But he got up and he started cussing. And he said, shoot me if you can, you know, I can't repeat it, but shoot me if you can, and started calling them names and started running up the hill shooting at them. And they asked the guys later that followed him, they said, why did you follow him up that hill? Because they saved the day that day for whatever little deal this was. And one of them looked at the man that was doing the debriefing, and he says, well, he stood up and started calling them, you know, and it seemed like they couldn't hit him, and we figured we were safer with him than anywhere, and so we just went up that hill. Oh, he was a character. And after everybody started laughing, thank you for laughing, after they all started laughing in that same fashion, I said, you know, Harry Truman, even though he was so imperfect, he always tried to do what he said, and he always tried to mean what he said. And we need that today.
Absolutely.
And I can't remember exactly word for word how I said it to them, but something along that line, and everybody in the place applauded, and this guy shut up. Thank you, Lord. He did.
He did talk to God about the atomic bomb, and like people thought he was the only one that decided that, and he made him understand that there was a group that decided to do that. But he said that he knew that if they didn't do it, there were going to be thousands and thousands more American boys killed.
I also think that and this is just an opinion of mine, it's not anything I can prove, and I'm glad you said that, because I think that Roosevelt knew he was dying. I also think that Roosevelt knew that the atomic bomb would have to be used in order to save American lives.
Yeah.
And I think he knew that Truman would make the tough decision in the right manner, because it took somebody like him. And I cannot prove that, of course. It's just something, being a little bit of a history buff, that I actually think. And another thing that I have heard, and I didn't mean to tell this, but you reminded me, so I hope we're not running out of time. But there's so much material about Truman and about everything. He fired General MacArthur.
Oh, yeah.
One gentleman told me when I was in Shelbyville, he held up his hand, and I could tell. I can always tell when it's not a question about what happened on October 15th, 1948. I can just sense it in their face and everything. And he says, you know, Harry Truman made 2 mistakes, and he apologized for one of them. And again, I thought, well, you're about to tell me, so okay. He said he called the Marines seagoing bellhops. And he apologized for that. I looked that up. He did. And he did apologize. And then secondly, he fired MacArthur. And so that caused me to re-look that up. And he agonized over firing MacArthur because MacArthur was a great general. He was also a brother Mason. And he flew to Korea and he talked with him several times, and he told him, he said, General, you're going to have to quit doing this because the president makes policy, not the general in the field. And each time MacArthur would not listen. One of his committee members, and since I didn't plan on talking about it tonight, I can't remember which one now, told him the day before he fired him, he said, Mr. President, it's not about your ego. It's not about MacArthur's ego. It's about who makes policy for the military. Who is the commander-in-chief? And the next day was when Harry Truman fired him with that bit of advice. And again, he made the tough decision. That made him more unpopular. Even his mother-in-law wouldn't speak to him when he went home that night. She got up and went in the other room, and Bess had to tell her, well, he's the president. He can fire whomever he wants. Is there anything else? Because we need to bring this to a close. I sure thank you for your time.
Do you know about the top coat, the mayor's top coat?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask if that was true. He actually wore the mayor's top coat home instead of his own. And the mayor had to go back and get the top coat.
I don't remember who was mayor at the time.
Dick Byland.
Dick Byland?
Yeah.
Dick Byland was here in Lodge one night, years ago. He told me that story, so
Yeah.
I know it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah,
And he said Truman, I don't know, I think he sent him a letter or something. And Truman invited him to the White House, and he went up there and
went up there and exchanged his coat. Yeah. Truman was, he was a very down-to-earth type of individual. And
You know, I was talking to you about it.
anybody?
One other story I heard, I don't know fact or fiction, that there was a few pictures taken that evening. And the story I heard was that anyone that wanted their picture taken with the president, he accommodated in his apron and in his regalia. As he was leaving or something, somebody from the press asked him to remove his regalia. They would like to get a picture. He took his regalia off and he said, that'll be all for the scene.
Yeah, he refused the picture after that.
I heard that, I don't know.
Yeah, that, in fact, one of them even tried to position himself to cover up his Masonic ring, and he actually told him where he could go. There was something else that you made me think of along those lines, just for the members of Beech Grove Lodge. He asked if he could keep his apron that he wore that night as a memento of the occasion, and naturally the master refused. No, he allowed him. Of course he did. He allowed him to keep his apron for that evening, and also Beech Grove Lodge made Harry Truman an honorary member of this lodge.
That's true.
Okay, and with that we'll conclude. Thank you. I hope we didn't take too long. Oh.
I want to know how you got paid by the Historical Society. I did it for nothing.
I was expecting to do it for nothing, and when they handed me that check, I hope I didn't look too shocked.
I would have.
I was told that when the president went upstairs, his bodyguards wanted to go with him, and he says, I'll be safer up there than I will be down here.
Now, he told them that he was safe. I think I haven't been able to tell. That's one thing that bothers me. On the attendance register, there's a brother from Kansas City. That's not too many names from Truman's. You might look sometime. And I wondered if he was one of the Secret Service people, but I couldn't never find out. But see, they weren't all members, and he did tell them that he was as safe here as he would be anywhere. They didn't have to worry about him, and they were made to stay downstairs or outside or wherever. Well, thanks again.
One final thing, I've heard the story too, that the Secret Service man asked him to vouch for him to get in the lodge. Typical Truman, he said, hell no, work your way in.
Yes, and did you know that Dwight Smith, it's a rumor again among the grand officers, and I never could prove it, so I didn't mention it a while ago. But Dwight Smith supposedly told, he said, "Mr. President, I know you're a past Grand Master of Missouri. You don't have to work your way in tonight." And Truman refused and made them examine him also. It is just so fascinating and so much fun. And everywhere I go, it seems to just, it kind of snowballs, and then I'll get invited somewhere else, you know. But tonight's, this is not the normal program I do. I've done the one that I do here before, but I thought tonight we'd have a little more fun. And thanks to all of you. You've been a big help. All the members of Beech Grove Lodge have been a big help.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.